Hello, and welcome to Commissioner Car. Today is Monday, April 25th, and I am Dustin Zarni. I'm the Democratic Elections Commissioner for Onondaga County, and this is our weekly check-in show on election news. There's not a lot to talk about this week, but I wanted to talk about some things that are coming up. Last Friday, the New York State Appellate Court ruled that the state Senate maps and state Assembly maps for New York State were constitutional. This is a continuation of a case that came earlier in the month, that there was a ruling that threw out all of the state Senate, Assembly, and congressional maps, but then that ruling was put on hold. The original judge ordered an August primary. That was also put on hold while New York State appealed that ruling. That appeal happened last week, and on Friday, the appellate court ruled that the state Assembly and Senate maps were constitutionally valid. And it ruled that the congressional maps, though, were not, and that it was an illegal Democratic gerrymander. It did not rule, though, that there would be it did not rule that there would be an August primary. In fact, it gave the legislatures until April 30th, which is Friday, to come up with a new map for the congressional map only, but not any ways for people to get on the ballot in 2022. This week, the final court, the Court of Appeals, that's the highest court in New York. It starts with the Supreme Court, then it goes to the Appellate Court, and then it goes to the Court of Appeals. That is how New York courts are worded, and how the order, as opposed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is the top federal court. This is a little bit different in New York because it's New York. We have to be a little different. So that hearing, I believe, is tomorrow for the Court of Appeals, and we expect a ruling by the end of the week. So by the end of this week, we should have some direction on what's happening with the congressional maps, the state Assembly maps, and the Senate maps. And the reason I say all three is it does look pretty clear that the state Assembly maps and the Senate maps are not going to go anywhere. So both the original courts, the Supreme Court and the Appellate Court, found that those were not constitutional gerrymanders. The Supreme Court found that they didn't follow the rules, and so they have to throw it out. But the Appellate Court said the rules were vague enough that they did follow it, even though the New York Redistricting Commission could not submit a second set of maps. The legislature was allowed to draw the maps. So that question seems to be settled. While the Court of Appeals may take it up, that question seems to be settled. What is unsettled is the congressional maps. And again, I think that there's going to be three possibilities that can come out of the Court of Appeals. They can overturn the appellate court's ruling that this is a constitutional gerrymander. If they overturn that, then we live with these maps for the next 10 years. They can throw out this the congressional maps and then set an August primary and have a ballot access period sometime, probably starting tomorrow, or sometime very clear shortly, where we would all have to petition again to get on the ballot for the new maps, or set a time for when the special master would draw these maps, and have a very quick timeline. Or what I feel is probably the most likely scenario, whether I agree with that scenario or not is a whole nother story, but I feel like the most likely scenario is a living with the maps for 2022, an order for the legislature to redraw the maps for 2024, and if they do not do that, a special master coming in for 2024. because it is very late in the cycle. We've seen this in other states where this late in the cycle they say it's too late to change the maps for this year for our primary that's happening in June, and the federal primary is in August. So, or that would be the latest you could have a federal primary. We used to have a primary in September, but the reason that we can't hold a primary in September is because it doesn't comply with the Federal MOVE Act. So, and no, David, I cannot comment about the lawsuit in New York 22 about signature fraud. And I'll tell you why I can't comment on that in a second. Because I am going to go into objections in a little bit. So yes, I am not, that is the state of New York redistricting. So the state is, we still don't know. The state is, we will know this week. And I hope by next week's Commissioner in the Car, we will have definitive answers on that as well. Another thing I hope that we will have definitive answers on by next week's Commissioner in the Car is the early voting sites in Onondaga County. We have 10 early voting sites that we have to place in Onondaga County. May 1st is the deadline, but that's on a Sunday, so we have our meeting set for May 2nd. Negotiations are ongoing. And I hope that we'll have something to announce on May 2nd. So tune in for, I can't talk much more about that. I'm not going to negotiate in the press. But I will tell you, my position on early voting has been very clear for years, and my positions have not changed. So we will see on May 2nd, we have a official board meeting at the Onondaga County Board of Elections, and I'm hopeful that we'll be announcing what our 10 sites are for 2022. Remember, we've had 6 the last 3 years, and now we have to expand to 10. So I'm hopeful that that will be resolved over the next week. Objections started. We ruled on objections here at the Board of Elections today. Now, and this is different than objections at the State Board of Elections. Any district that falls over a county line, the New York State Board of Elections deals with ballot access on that and certifying that election. And even though we run the election here locally, we don't put people on the ballot for those things because they cross county lines. So Congress, both of the state Senate districts and 2 of the Assembly districts cross state party lines, and of course Supreme Court cross county lines, so they're dealt with at the State Board of Elections. So the lawsuit and the petition challenge for Congress, the Onondaga County Board of Elections does not get involved in that. And since I have no dog in that fight, I'm a neutral party when it comes to primaries. I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know the fact basis of that. I don't know anything more than what anybody else has read in the paper. The only comment I will have is this. Challenges happen. They happen all the time. Challenges for fraud happen much rarer, which they should happen much rarer, because you wouldn't want to think that fraud is happening. But the only way you can prove fraud is in a court case, not in a petition challenge. So if fraud is being alleged, the proper venue for it to be alleged is in the court system. So any inference that somehow this shouldn't be happening or anything like that is premature. We have to see what the court says about whether they have a case or not. It's also premature to believe that something wrong happened as well. Again, many times people allege things that do not come to pass. So we will have to see what the court rules on this. I can tell you that I've been a part of court cases, some that alleged fraud here in Onondaga County. I thought was going to go one way, and then a witness came up, said something that turned the case on its head and moved the case one direction or another. So that could happen here, that could happen, or it could not happen, and then we will get a court ruling. We will see. We will see if where that goes. But here at the Onondaga County Board of Elections, we had a series of hearings today on the Pompey Town Republican Committee. We had, there seems to be a primary happening there out in Pompey for Pompey Town Republicans. All of the petitions were challenged. Out of the 12 candidates running for a primary, there's 6 different districts, and 2 of them, I'm sorry, 3 of the candidates were thrown off the ballot. The other 9 survived. The 3 that were thrown off the ballot were all thrown off the ballot on a technical reason, because they did not put the appropriate primary date in the preamble of the petition. This is a fatal defect. Some would say it's not appropriate. That is just a miscue, but this is ruled by a court to be a fatal defect. And so those 3 committee members petitions were thrown off the ballot. One of them, though, could stay on because they're going to do a write-in campaign, because there will be a primary. There will be 3 other candidates running for 2 spots, and a primary box will be open. The other one in Pompey District 2, both candidates that were primary were thrown off, so there will not be a primary there. So, for the most part, the Pompey Town Republican Committee primary, this is for the most basic elective office in Onondaga, has a primary out in Pompey. Those are the local primaries. Again, there are statewide primaries and congressional primaries and state senate primaries that we are having here in New York and in Onondaga, and that affect Onondaga County. That's governor, lieutenant governor. Right now, for both parties, right now, U.S. Senator for the Democratic side, although there's a possibility, I've heard of a petition challenge of that. But we'll have to see when the state board sets its primary ballots on May 4th. May 2nd is their commissioner meeting. By May 4th, they have to set their ballots, and we'll know about any petition challenges for the various governor, lieutenant governor, and state senate races. There is also a Republican primary for state senate 55. And there is, of course, the congressional primary on both sides, on Republican and Democratic. The only petition challenge that I know that is going on there is that petition challenge for Josh Riley. And again, that is been well covered in the paper, and I will not be talking about it. New York State just started their session. Their final session going into the June calendar. This is New York State Legislature only has session for half the year. That doesn't mean that they only work half a year. They're full-time employees, and they do constituent service between the middle of June and the rest of the year. And sometimes they have a special session at the end of the year. But they have all of their session days in the beginning of the year, and that's when they pass all the bills that are going to take effect. That is happening now. It opened today, April 25th. I don't know what bills will be passed. There are some bills I'm watching. One of the bills that I'm watching is the Wrong Church bill. That is a bill that will allow affidavit ballots that are cast at polling places that are not their home polling places to be counted for the level of ballots that, or level of races that they're allowed to vote for. It's a bill I'm in favor of. The John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, another bill I am in favor of, which will give stringent requirements and abilities for challenges to designations of polling places and all these other things that boards of elections do. It means a lot more work for boards of elections, but I feel a lot more protection for the voters, and that's why I'm for it. Then there's some other bills that I'm not necessarily for, not necessarily against. The 10-day, moving the constitutional minimum to 10 days for voter registration. And also, there is a bill that has been introduced, and there's been some talk about allowing a candidate to be removed from the ballot if they have been convicted of a felony or charged or indicted for a felony, And this would be, of course, to alleviate New York from having ex-Lieutenant Governor Brian Benjamin on the ballot. And I got to say, I'm generally in favor of having truth on the ballot. So if there's truth on the ballot, which means that the people that are running on the ballot are actually running, and that the voters are choosing between candidates that are actively participating in the election. And if there are candidates that do not want to be part of the election, I'm generally in favor of allowing them to remove themselves at a time where it is reasonable for the Board of Elections to reprint, or to not reprint, but to send out absentee ballots, so on and so forth. I don't know how much movement there is on this bill. I think there's a lot of question about whether, if Brian Benjamin is allowed to remove himself, would a replacement be allowed? Or do we live with the other two lieutenant governor candidates? That's why this is kind of tricky. That's why these kinds of bills are usually done in the not in the heat of a moment, but in the off season, and kind of worked and thought about. But we've never had a situation like this, and I think it merits consideration. At least, I don't know if it means that it will pass or should pass. So that is something that legislators are going to decide over the next few weeks. So we have until the middle of June for some of these bills to pass. One bill that I'm waiting to be signed by the governor that has already passed is the info notices that we send out yearly. It allows us to send them out later in May instead of in. Actually, it should have been already sent out already. Those have passed the Senate and the Assembly. We're just waiting for the governor to sign that bill. We have a schedule on May 9th for our info notices to go out here at Onondaga County Board of Elections because of this new bill. So those are the bills that I'm watching. And David also asked, can I comment on the McCarthy January 6th texts that were released? Yes, I can comment on it. I am not surprised. There is nothing about that whole situation that surprises me. These hypocrites who say things, and you kind of got those things confused. So McCarthy January 6th texts weren't text. It was audio recordings of a call where McCarthy was saying that he was going to ask Trump to resign in the wake of the January 6th insurrection from 2 years ago. Well, a year and a half ago now, and then of course now he's saying he never said it. Well, then the audio tape came out, and then he's saying, "Well, I didn't mean it. I was just kind of joshing with Liz Cheney, and I'm not actually going to. I wasn't going to actually ask Trump to resign." But there are the Mark Meadows texts that were released, which shows that the White House chief of staff was actively working with, among other people, Senator Mike Lee and a whole bunch of Republican lawmakers like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, in to try to find ways to subvert the results for the election. So those are the things that that are part of the text, and those are just reprehensible. This is an agent of the government, one of the top public employees in the nation, trying to subvert the election. We know that this happened. I'm looking forward to the January 6th commission details, because we know that these people, they attempted a coup on our government, and it's reprehensible. I'm for fair elections. I'm for free elections. And I'm for accepting the results of the elections. Democrats lost some elections in 2021. They lost some in 2020. Republicans lost elections in 2020 and 2021. For the most part, they all accepted those elections. Donald Trump could not do so. And he led a violent insurrection on our Capitol, and it was reprehensible. So that's what I have, and I do think people should be prosecuted for it. But that's all I got. this week. It's kind of a quick commissioner car, about 20 minutes is what I usually like to do with that. Go to DustinZarni.com. This week I have coming up on Wonky Wednesday. I've finished my City of Syracuse retrospective, and now I am looking at the budget. This month our final budget numbers from 2021 were released, and they will those numbers were released, and I think Onondaga County Board of Elections did very well with your taxpayer dollars. I can't wait to do a Wonky Wednesday about that on Wednesday and release that. On Friday, I'll have a Zoom with Zarni with Jeff Weiss. He is the New York State expert on redistricting, and we'll be talking about what he thinks is going to happen with the appellate case, and then finally, I'm continuing to work for the people all week. I'm actually going to Albany on Friday because I'm speaking on election law changes for the New York Democratic Rural Conference. I've been asked to go up there, so I'm doing that on Friday as well. So there's a lot going on here for me. We're waiting for the final ballot from the state board, which will come next week. Early voting sites, which will hopefully come next week. New York Redistricting, which will come later this week. There is never a dull moment in elections in New York for the last 3 years. They're really forever. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.